It's time for the fourth floor problem. There are some people, the official storytellers, will never even admit that there's a problem here, but I hope that you, my gentle viewers, will entertain my solution. It's not an ironclad solution, but it's a solution nonetheless. And I have it, so I have to give it away. The fourth floor problem is that there are multiple instances of evidence that the fourth floor was stated to be a source of the shots on the Channel 2 Dallas police radio frequency prior to 1240. There's a lot of evidence that that was said, and it's not about whether the witness had the floors mistaken, really meant the fifth floor, really meant the sixth floor. What I'm talking about here is that it was actually stated that shots came from the fourth floor, and that the evidence indicates that this was stated prior to 1240. And the problem is that the recording we have today does not have the fourth floor stated as a source of the shots, not until 1240. Like I said, the evidence is that it was stated before 1240, but the first time we hear it stated is 1240. So this is a problem, my friends, a problem which I must solve. And here we have the first appearance of the fourth floor on the Channel 2 recording at 1240. And note the dispatcher is giving a summary of the evidence that he's collected so far, presumably from radio traffic, and he mentions the fifth and the fourth floor.
Can you give us any information as to what happened for these people out here?
Evidently there has been a shooting with the president involved. I do not know the seriousness of it. One is at Parkland along with Dallas one. We have information that the shots came from the fourth floor of the book depository store on the corner of Elman Field. Officers are now surrounding and searching the building 1240.
So this is evidence that the dispatcher has heard on the radio the fourth floor mentioned as a source of the shots. And he restates the same information 5 minutes later. So the dispatcher heard fourth floor before 1240. And then there's Victoria Adams, who was an excellent witness who remembered details better than most. She's actually a key witness for what was going on in the Texas School Book Depository. She heard the fourth floor mentioned at about 12:37, I make it out to be. She told the Warren Commission there was a motorcycle that was parked on the corner of Houston and Elm directly in front of the east end of the building, and I paused there to listen to the report on the police radio, and they said the shots had been fired, which apparently came either from the second floor or the fourth floor window. And so I panicked, as I was the only open window on the fourth floor. Did they say second floor or second floor from the top? It said second floor. So I decided maybe I had better go back in the building, and she went back in the building. So this is excellent evidence that fourth floor was spoken on the radio, and because it was her floor, and that's what caused her to go back in the building. So that's what she heard, definitely, whether it was there or not. Now you might think this was at the 1240 time when the dispatcher said fourth floor, but I don't think that makes sense. Her second floor statement was heard at 12. Has to be at 12:37, because that is when the second floor was mentioned by Patrolman Brewer. Now I think this is a mistake by Brewer. I think he did mean second window from the southeast corner, because that's what's stated elsewhere. But he says second floor, and she heard second floor, and she was right about that, and that was at 12:37. And the way she tells the story, it sounds like second floor and fourth floor were mentioned in close proximity, and she says nothing about the fifth floor that the dispatcher says. So it sounds as if She heard this before 1240, probably around 1237 when she heard second floor. So Victoria Adams hears fourth floor. And my next witness is Special Agent Warner of the FBI. He was not listening to the radio, at least not so far as I know, but he was the first person tasked with the task of making a transcript of the recording. And on the recording he listened to, in the 1236 minute, he heard fourth floor. In fact, that's all he understood of what was said. He is not, obviously he was not familiar with the Dallas radio terminology and practices, and he didn't have a keen ear for hearing what was said on the recording, so his is the most incomplete of the transcripts. However, the one thing he heard at 1236 was fourth floor. And so this is a recording that he was listening to, the first recording apparently that was released to anybody by the Dallas police. And on that recording he heard fourth floor at 1236, but there's no fourth floor at 1236 now. So what I think is that the recording was altered after Special Agent Warner heard it. So my three witnesses, Victoria Adams, the dispatcher, and Special Agent Warner, all heard fourth floor on the radio or on the recording before 1240, and by the Warner transcript we can pin that down to a time of 1236, which is consistent with the other witness accounts. That is, that's before 1240, and it would be at a time that would make sense with Victoria Adams. And just to pile on a little here, this is an FBI document showing real-time updates coming from Shanklin, the FBI agent in charge in Dallas. I don't know for a fact that he was listening to the radio, but his updates include information that shots came from the fourth floor, so presumably his information was coming from the Dallas police radio traffic. And going back to the Warner transcript where he's giving times, when he writes down the time, he's writing down what he hears on the recording. So he hears the dispatcher say 1236, he writes down 1236. Well, if you study the Warner transcript in this area and compare it to the recording, and I'm using a transcript that I got off the McAdams webpage here, you will see that the only possibility, the only possible transmission he could possibly be referring to on the recording as it is now is the one in 1236 by Sergeant Harkness, where he is reporting shots from the building, but he reports they came from the fifth floor, not the fourth floor.
I have a witness that say something from the fifth floor of the Texas Depository Bookstore, Houston and Elm. Fifth floor, fifth floor, fifth floor.
Clearly what's spoken here is fifth floor, and I don't think it's credible to think that Special Agent Warner thought that was fourth floor, or that Victoria Adams thought that was fourth floor, or that the dispatcher thought that was fourth floor. If they heard this transmission, then they heard fifth floor, not fourth floor. So that's the problem. The fourth floor was heard on the radio by multiple people before 1240, but the recording we have today does not have that there. So if the recording was altered, of course it had to have been altered for a purpose, and I think it all has to do with Amos Ewans. He's the boy here with his hand on his hat. Amos Ewans was a witness to the assassination, and there are varying accounts of what he said, but the earliest account we have, at present anyway, comes from Jim Underwood, a reporter at the scene. Underwood said that he witnessed Sergeant Harkness here questioning Ewans here, and this is in front of the, or by the side the southeast corner of the Texas School Book Depository, and I believe that's Jim Underwood on the left, to the left of the policeman, Sergeant Harkness. And the earliest report on the record we have comes from him, and he broadcast his report of the questioning of Amos Ewans, whatever his name really was, on the radio, and we have what purports to be a recording of that broadcast I got from the David Von Pine collection, and this is it.
And then the police officers found an 11-year-old colored boy named Eunice, that was his last name, who said that he looked up after the first shot and saw a colored man lean out of about the 4th floor window of the Texas School Book Depository building and fire 2 more shots. The police are now surrounding the area down here. Sirens are screaming. And evidently, police believe that the man who fired the shots is still in the Texas School Book Depository building at the corner of Elm and Houston in downtown.
We return you now to our regular program.
Well, there you go. We have a witness, James Underwood, a witness to Amos Ewans talking to Sergeant Harkness. And according to Underwood, Amos Ewans, or Eunice, an 11-year-old black boy, told Sergeant Harkness that he saw a colored man, a black person, shooting from the 4th floor. So here we have the 4th floor. This was broadcast after 1240, according to my information. Not a long time after 1240, but long enough so that this would not have been the source of everybody's thinking it was the 4th floor. It had to have been on the police recording, I think. And this corroborates that such a report should have been made, at least by Sergeant Harkness. That is, if the witness Ewans told Harkness the shot came from the 4th floor and that it was a black man shooting, then one would think that Harkness would get on the radio and tell the dispatcher that he has a witness who saw somebody shooting from the 4th floor, and probably would also say it was a black man. And of course, this is not the official story, and that would explain why such a message would have been removed from the recording of the radio traffic. And I have to note, of course, that Sergeant Harkness did testify to the Warren Commission, and he did not tell them that an 11-year-old black boy told him that a black man was shooting from the 4th floor. He was not questioned in a probing way to try to get to the bottom of this issue I'm dealing with. Perhaps the Warren Commission people weren't aware of this issue, but even if they had been, I'm sure they wouldn't have bothered. So the testimony of Harkness does not corroborate what I'm saying here, but I think I'm right nonetheless. I think the evidence shows that, and that Harkness in his testimony was either mistaken or not telling the whole truth. And I don't think the important issue to the cover-up was which floor was stated. I don't think it matters really that 4th floor was said. I'm just using that as a way to find the issue here. 4th floor was said, and that was removed, but it was removed because the rest of the report is that Ewans saw a black man shooting, and the problem with that for the cover-up is that a black man really was shooting. There was a black man on the 5th floor, and even though the witness said 4th floor, apparently it really was the 5th floor. He made a mistake, and as I show here, it's easy to make that mistake. If you dismiss that 1st floor as a foundation, then the open windows there on the 5th floor might look like the 4th floor to you. Anyway, I have concluded that Junior Jarman was shooting from the 5th floor. Part of it is based on this, but part of it is based on the fact that I can hear on the Dictabelt recording a person saying, "I be Jarman armed with a gun," and just before the president is shot.